Hi, my name is Erica Allen, and my presentation is over equal pay for equal work. The purpose of this presentation is to make aware the gender wage gap that still exists in corporate America. The wage gap myth is something that is widely disputed, and we are going to look at some facts to show that it is still prevalent. First, we will look at the Equal Pay Act of 1963, which was enacted to prevent this wage gap. Next, we will look at the wage gap myth and what some say is why women get paid less, and not just because employers pay men more for the sake that they are men. We will pull up some statistics from the U.S. Department of Labor and the U.S. Census to see where men and women lie today in their incomes. The wage gap contributes to domestic violence towards women, and we will look more into this. Last, we will talk about some solutions to help close this wage gap for today's generation of women and not just the women in the future. The Equal Pay Act of 1963 is part of a Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938, as amended, and is administered and enforced by the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. The Equal Pay Act prohibits sex-based wage discrimination between men and women who work in the same establishment and perform jobs that require substantially equal skill, effort, and responsibility under similar working conditions. The minimum wage section states that no employers that have employees subject to these provisions of this section shall discriminate within the place of employment between their employees on the basis of the employee's sex. They are not allowed to pay one employee of one sex a different wage than another employee of another sex when they are performing the same job with the same workload, skills, and exerting the same effort and take on the same responsibility. The minimum wage section talks about how an employer who is paying a wage rate differential in violation of this subsection cannot, in order to comply with this law, reduce the wage rate of their employees. This act was effective June 10th of 1963. Women joined the workforce in the late 1800s, early 1900s, way before the Equal Pay Act was set in place in 1963. Since the beginning, women have been paid less than men, respectively. Women are expected and traditionally known for taking care of the household, their children, and their husbands. The wage gap myth contains some opinions as to why there is a wage gap between men and women in the workforce that are not due to employers paying men more just because they are men. We will look at feminization in the workplace. In the workplace, there are women dominating jobs, men dominating jobs, and jobs that seem to be balanced between men and women. Still today, in 2017, we see from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics that women's earnings are still less than men's by 83%, but this percentage varies upon occupation. The 83% earnings of men's is the average. We will see the highest difference is in construction and extraction careers. Women's earnings as a percentage of men's is 91.3%. The lowest percentage difference is in the legal field. Women's earnings are 56.7% of men's earnings. Some people feel that the wage gap exists because of women's career preferences and career choices that they make for themselves. Socially, women can choose to work or not to work. Some people say that women choose lower paying careers than men, so of course they are going to make less money. Male-dominated jobs, like computer programming, still show us that the wage gap exists. In 2012, women computer programmers earned 84% of what men computer programmers made. This is also taking into consideration education levels, experience, hours worked, age, and job titles. Culturally, we know that women are expected to be the caretakers and men are to be the breadwinners. Now that women are nearly half of the workforce, women still earn less because they take time off for motherhood. Women are considered to be more costly employees because of taking time off for their children when they are sick, doctor's appointments, school, and extracurricular activities. Also, women take maternity leave, which is costly for the employer, although it is not common that this time is to be paid. Traditionally, when adults have children, there are social and cultural norms that we teach our children based on their gender. Boys are to play with trucks and to get dirty, while girls are to take care of baby dolls and have tea time. We need to start teaching our children, regardless of their sex, that they can be whatever they want. If a girl wants to grow up and have the authority in a business, then we need to encourage that. Women are scared to ask for raises, unlike men. It is found in a study done in 2007 that men employers are not nearly as likely to hire a woman who negotiates her salary. Men take these negotiations from women as demanding, although it is in the workplace and not personal. So due to culture, women are aware of this circumstance and will avoid doing this in fear of the repercussions. The second shift. This is known as domestic labor, or taking care of the house and the children. Now, legally, women are equal to men in most countries, but women are still disadvantaged in the work field because of parenting. The cultural and traditional expectations remain the same today, even though women work full-time jobs as well. So in turn, women really have two full-time jobs, although they do not get monetary compensation for their second job. Because women are expected to still take care of the domestic labor, women do not have the extra time to dedicate to their first job. Men are willing and able to take on extra hours and projects for work without having the concern or the stress of what to do with the kids. We see that the percentage of working women versus working men is now 47%. This is almost half of the working population. From our previous slide, we see that the percentage of women wages averages out to 83% of a working man's income. It has been studied and found that there are 3 different types of households: traditional, egalitarian, and transitional. In traditional households, the woman took on all of the cooking, the cleaning, the nurturing of the children, and the men worked. They are the breadwinners. This type of household showed to be the minority. In egalitarian households, both the man and the woman share the domestic labor as much as possible. This also showed to be the minority. In the transitional households, they have a blending between the 2 other households to different degrees. The women aren't to be stuck in the home, but should still do the majority of the domestic labor. The men had a role in helping in the domestic labor, just not to the same degree as women. This household type was found to be the most popular. So my question is, does the unequal division of household work add to the wage gap? I think so, because we see that women are less likely to take on a position that requires extra hours due to the fact that they are still expected to be the ones to take care of the house. Motherhood is a huge contributor in the wage gap. I'm not talking about taking time off for sick kids. I'm also saying that with the wage gap present, women are scared to get married and have kids because they know that this will take away from their career and their income is going to plateau out, or that they will have to take pay cuts. Women are considered more expensive employees because of the time off required and because of unpaid and paid maternity leave. Women are the ones to take off work to parent, so they in turn are the ones earning less income. We see from the U.S. Census Bureau in a 2015 American Community Survey that the median earnings for a full-time year-round workers in the past 12 months by sex and occupation, that women are paid less than men. In selected occupations with 80% or more of female workers, men are paid more than women. Registered nurses, a predominantly women occupation, women average a little less than $60,000 a year, and men average a little over $70,000. In selected occupations with 45 to 55% female workers, a pretty balanced field between men and women, men are still paid more. Financial managers, an occupation in this section, women have an average pay of about $55,000 a year, while men are paid closer to $100,000 a year. And in selected occupations with 80% or more male workers, men are still paid more. For software developers, applications, and system software occupations, women's average pay of about $80,000 a year, while men have an average income of a little over $100,000 a year. Men across the board are paid more than women. From the United States Census Bureau in 2011, from new data provided with the most detailed look ever at years of school completed, more working women have college degrees than working men. This information was gathered among the employed population aged 25 and older. We see that 37% of women have completed their bachelor's degree compared to 35% of men, according to the new data from the U.S. Census Bureau. In 2010, the United States Department of Labor shows us the earnings of the employed population by occupation, race, ethnicity, and sex. The median usual weekly earning of Asian men was $1,408 and white men was $1,273, working full-time in management, professional, and related occupations. This is the highest paying major occupation group. Asian women, however, averaged weekly earnings of $1,143, and white women earn $932 in average weekly income, also in management and professional related occupations. In an American Economic Review in 2010, we see that 3/4 of all domestic violence against women is perpetrated by domestic partners. Women that are considered economically poor are disproportionately affected. It is predicted that women's relative wages that are increases her bargaining power, which in turn lowers the levels of violence by improving her outside opinion. It was found that decreases in the wage gap, women earning as much as men respectively, reduces the violence against women. The background showed that women with an annual income of $10,000 or less report rates of domestic violence 5 times greater than those with an annual income above $30,000 a year. It is also shown that Black women are also significantly at a greater risk of violence. Richard Gales, who conducted a pioneering study of the relationship between women's income and violence, found that the fewer resources that a woman has, like less personal income, the less likely she is to leave an abusive relationship. We have seen a closing of the wage gap since the Act of 1963, albeit small, and it is estimated that this gap will still be present till 2058 at the rate that it is closing now. So what can we do to help the women of today's generation? Having equal division of household labor would sure help. Having the possibility for a woman to take on more hours at work by the men taking on more domestic labor would help increase women's pay. This is not something that can be done through our legal system, but rather by teaching our sons that it is a shared responsibility, and as women, we need to let our spouses know what is expected. Having paid paternity and maternity leave could help reduce the fact that women are more expensive employees. I feel that men are just as important in the beginning of a new life as a mother. Men should be able to leave work and stay home with the baby and the recovering mother. Mothers should not be expected to take on this new life by themselves. Better access to childcare would tremendously help women in the work field. Childcare has gotten outrageously expensive, and women who are already earning less than men and single mothers as a whole cannot afford childcare. The government can enact better access to childcare to help the gender wage gap. Legislation choices for women and their own productive rights has been under legality review for some time. It is nationally argued that women should have the rights to do with what they want when it comes to their reproductive rights. I'm not going to get into my personal beliefs, but I am going to say that I am not one to tell another human what they are and are not allowed to do with their body. Women with disabilities have equal rights, but we do not have anything in place for women that are trans, bi, lesbians, or other sexual minorities. The sexual orientation of a person should not dictate what they do or do not qualify for as far as their careers go. We need to have these equal rights set in place for these minorities as well to close the wage gaps. That concludes my presentation. I thank you for listening and watching. I hope that we as a population can do what we can to close this wage gap and make it to where women are equally paid for the same work as men. Thank you.